Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It's time again for the reaction show. Welcome to First and Long. I am your co-host, Marcus. There's your other co-host, Mason. Mason, how you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm doing well. Coming off of a exciting week of week 4 football. We had 6 ranked matchups. It was really fun to watch. I think that the games lived up to their expectation this week. What do you think about the games this week, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. I was in favor of them because our picks did good. We had a 9-5 week on our picks. Had a couple of push bets out there, but all in all, the entertainment value was very high this week. Um, there was some little bit of disappointment, I guess, with Colorado. I think a lot of people were hoping and I guess some expecting Colorado to be competitive this weekend, and they were not. But we're going to get to that in due time. We're going to talk about Florida State, Oregon, Utah, Bama, Washington State, Ohio State, who got a very big win. Um, Penn State and Texas A&M, and a little bit in between. Um, let's get into this thing, man. You talked about in the preview show. Uh, you thought there was going to be a lot of unders, and man, that was a pretty good play. And I honestly wasn't really expecting that necessarily. But it was a it defenses still won the day in my opinion.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I almost just wish I would have played more unders. I would
yeah,
have made
me
a lot
too.
more, but yeah, you're right. This is an era of college football so far this season that we didn't see coming, where it seems like the defense is kind of winning games again.
Yeah.
It's been all offense for really the past 6 7 years, other than Georgia and Michigan. They've kind of stayed true to their defensive ways, I guess, but and been successful with it. But you saw a lot of teams this week whose defenses stood up, in the primetime game with Ohio State and Notre Dame. Both defenses played really stinking well. And of course, like I said, Michigan, Georgia both had great defensive showings. Texas had a great defensive showing. I
Yeah.
didn't see much out of the Florida State and Clemson defenses. That was just an old ACC battle right there. I mean, that was just a really good game. But um, UCLA, Utah, low scoring game. Some of this has to do with some offenses that, let's be honest, were pretty bad. Um, I think we saw a lot of bad quarterback play specifically this week. But
Yeah.
it made for some interesting games, anyways. To have low scoring games. If you're a real college football fan, that's exciting for you. You don't look for the 55-56. Pac-12 at dark win. That's I think those
Yeah.
days are past now. But unless I guess maybe you see like USC versus, I don't even know, man. Maybe like USC and Tennessee going at it, and Tennessee's offense is cooking. But
Yeah.
um, I think that maybe like in North Carolina would be a good example. C2, like high octane offenses going at it, whose defenses are not quite there yet. But ultimately, like you said, yeah, defense is kind of running the show this season so far. We've got some more good games to talk about next week, but for today, let's dive into what exactly transpired in week 4 and what our takeaways should be moving forward.
It is the week 4 reaction show, so let's react accordingly. All right, number 25, Florida. We're going to go through the top 25, and we'll, if a game doesn't deserve to be talked about like this one right here, then we're not going to talk about it. But Florida beats Charlotte 22-7. Not a not a great show in there. Um, but we're not going to go into depth about that. We'll have some more opportunities to talk about Florida in the upcoming weeks. But
Maybe
hey,
next
they
week
only gave
even.
up. Yeah, Yeah, they only gave up 1 touchdown, and I think that's, that's always a good thing, right? And, just had a really, really slow second half. I'm sorry for anybody that had to sit and watch that. Um, Tennessee 45, UTSA 14. Uh, Earlier in the year, I think people would have thought this would have been a better game, but Tennessee
Yeah.
ends up taking care of business. Pretty consistent, other than that third quarter, where they got outscored 14-0. But other than that, it was pretty much run of the mill stuff. Miami looks good again. Takes care of Temple on the road, which you know, every game for Miami is pretty much a road game. They don't even have their own stadium, but 41-7, Miami ends up taking care of Temple, and we'll talk a little bit more about Miami here in a little bit when we talk about that Clemson and Florida State game, because I think that provided a open door for Miami. Duke takes care of UConn handily. Doesn't score anything in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, this one would have just been flat out of hand. But they take care of business 41-7 on the road at UConn. Only give up 1 touchdown there in the fourth quarter, with backups in and getting some backups, some playing time. So that's still looking good for Duke. Everything's still intact. Everything still looks good for Duke for sure. Number 17, as far as the AP poll is concerned, number 17, North Carolina goes to Pitt, gets the win 41-24. I'd say that's pretty run of the mill stuff. Drake May does his thing, 296 yards. All right, Oklahoma, Cincinnati. Let's talk about this one for just a second. So Oklahoma takes care of Cincinnati. This one wasn't one of our key games of the week, but I had a play. We both had a play on this one, and we pushed. The line was 14. The spread was 14, and Oklahoma does cover. But I just want to, kind of talk about this Oklahoma offense here for a second. And look, Cincinnati is not great, and I did say that I thought maybe that there would be some home field advantage stuff going on in this game. This was Cincinnati's first game in the Big 12, but this was not a overly impressive showing from Oklahoma here. Cincinnati not known to have a great defense, and look at this right here, man. 34 carries for 103 yards, averaging 3 yards a carry, rushing, and you got running the ball out here. There's a pretty big deficiency at running back for Oklahoma, it seems to me. Seems like they're missing some depth right there. I mean, Dylan Gabriel rushes for 11 yards, 20. I'm sure there's some sacks included here. We'll get down to the bottom and look at the sacks and stuff, but I don't know, man. This offense, it sputters at times, and I don't. I was expecting a little bit more from the Oklahoma offense this year, but now, and I said in the preseason that I felt like they would take a little bit of a step back, but I meant a little bit of a step, not taking. I mean, the offense was better than this last year, as from what I can see. I don't know. I was riding pretty high on Oklahoma. This is 2 weeks in a row that they've done right about exactly what Vegas was expecting. Seems like Vegas got a pretty good handle on this team. Did you get a chance to take a look at this at all? Emory Jones has no reason. There's no reason that he should be starting at a Power 5 college football team. I'm just going to be honest with you. I know he had one game this year where he scored like 7 touchdowns, but dude, I mean, Emory Jones is just not a Power 5 quarterback. He's just not. And this is concerning too, right here. 6 of 16 on third down. That's just not getting it. Did you get a chance to look at? Yeah.
Yeah. So this was one that I was interested in, right? Had a play on it. I saw kind of, early on at 7-3, 10-3 at half. And I'm just looking at this game like, what the heck, man? I expected by halftime, I thought it would be, maybe like 21-3 or something like that. But you can see it right there on third down efficiency, 6 of 16. Credit Cincinnati's defense for coming up with some stops. I think that Cincinnati's defense is a little bit better than maybe we thought that they would be. But ultimately, I expect Oklahoma to still be able to put up 30 or 40 points
Yeah,
against just
and
about
at
any team.
425 yards, you got to put up more than 20 points. I
Absolutely.
mean, that you've got to convert that into 30 points and should be able to do so. But I mean, I don't know. It's just a little bit lackluster, I feel like.
Yep. So not what we were expecting, but helpful to come out of that one with a push, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And like I said last week, I don't think I actually bet on them last week, but they ended up finishing, right around what the spread was, and it just Vegas got a pretty good handle on them. It seems pretty clear. And it was 2 weeks in a row where I thought that the line was too low. Um, and maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't too low, as we can see here. But Oklahoma does take care of business, and they're undefeated. They're in the Big 12. I don't know. I don't see another team stepping in this team's way right this second, other than Texas, obviously. And you never know. Texas seems to be a little bit inconsistent, and we'll kind of go over them. They had a good weekend, but that we've seen some inconsistencies out of them as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. Oregon State at Washington State. Um, this was a really good game. It ended up being a really good game as Washington State jumped out to an early lead. And boy, oh boy, Kim Ward is just sick with it, man. This guy was throwing the ball all over the field, had receivers, running all over the place, and man, it was really, really, really impressive. You see Kyle Williams here with 174 yards receiving. Josh Kelly with 159 yards receiving. He's got him about 3 targets and I tell you what, that seems to be a trend. Washington's the same way. They got about 3 dudes that are just bad to the bone, and they just go to them over and over and over and over. And it just absolutely wears teams down, and they're able to score some points. But Cam Ward was 28 of 34, 404 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. DJU 17 of 34. Pretty average day for DJU, man.
Yep.
I
I
don't.
think that those stat lines kind of tell more about the game than the score of the game really tells.
Yeah.
Oregon State able to put up 21 there in the fourth quarter to make it a ball game, but it was pretty much after the third quarter, it was pretty much over, and you kind of knew
Yeah.
how this game was going to play out. You'd like to see Washington State finish a little bit better there, hunker down on defense and just play a little bit better on defense in general. They're late, but they come away with a pretty outstanding offensive performance, I thought, and against a stingy Oregon State defense, and I think that they kind of proved some of the questions that I had, which was, can Washington State win without a running game? And they proved that they could.
Yeah.
They're really, really good at passing the ball, and they're able to win like that. And they're one to watch in the Pac-12 this year. They're one of about 4 or 5 teams right now to really keep an eye on. It's very interesting. Still out west, this is not. It's not a fluke, y'all. Like, the Pac-12 is legit. Pay attention. Stay
Yeah.
up late. Watch the games. Like, it's good quality games going on.
Yep. And we got a couple more of them that we're gonna go through, but I like what you said there. They're definitely figuring out a way to win without running the football, at least for now. And I think that's going to be the difference between your Pac-12 champion this year and your runners up is going to be somebody that's going to be able to stop the run and make somebody completely one-dimensional and then do something about it. Oregon State wasn't able to do anything about it. They didn't have the Jimmies and Joes in the secondary to keep up with these guys. It was very, very clear. That was just a well-oiled machine that we saw in Pullman for sure. let's go to the Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban Bowl here. Alabama wins 24-10. All the money in the world was coming in on Ole Miss. Everybody wanted to be on Ole Miss this weekend, and I don't think it had anything to do with Ole Miss. I think it had more to do with the fact that everybody wants to watch somebody be dethroned, and I don't think while we're on a obvious regression in the Alabama, you know, oligarchy or whatever you want to call it, the empire's coming down, but it ain't coming down that fast. Okay. And I talked about last week before this game, I said, what big game has Lane Kiffin won? And we couldn't even answer it. I know it's a bowl game against somebody. I can't remember who it was. But the point is, you can't remember it. You can't even remember a big win. He doesn't even have a marquee win at Ole Miss. He really doesn't. Anytime that there was one that we thought was a marquee win, it turned out the team was garbage, hot garbage. And here we go again, man. What a dud. I mean, Ole Miss just couldn't figure anything out against this Alabama defense. They were confused. Jackson Dart was constantly on the go. Honestly, considering the pressure that it looked like he was under, hey, I guess he didn't do too awful bad. Didn't have his rushing totals like he normally does, and that really was what did them in and made them one-dimensional. They ran the ball 29 times for 56 yards. This Alabama defense, as I said last week, is pretty good. They're pretty good, and I think Ole Miss is pretty average. What did you think about this game? And at times, this game was a little bit painful to watch, especially in the first half.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess this kind of went the way that I saw it going. If Alabama was going to win, they kind of just really looked like that boa constrictor that they used to look like. Now they weren't. Ole Miss was able to get to the quarterback a lot, especially in that first half. Milroe was on his back almost every other play. Every time he went back to pass, it's still a little bit odd to me that that Alabama does not run the ball as well as they should to still be able to win games and things like that. Now later in the game, they were able to kind of establish that run game, and they kind of had to keep going to it really, but the offensive line is still deficient in my opinion, and not meeting expectations by any means, so they're having to kind of play around that a little bit. And I think that this game really proved that Jalen Milroe is the guy. He is the quarterback without a doubt on the roster. We saw what the other two did last week, and we saw what Jalen Milroe did this week. He was much more efficient against a better team. So I think that they're trending in the right direction, right? We know they have the pieces to do it. I thought that the offensive play call was pretty dang good, honestly. I don't think that there was anything to complain about as an Alabama fan in Tommy Rees's play calling, and I don't know. I thought it was a pretty positive win towards the end. That first half was a real struggle bus, but other teams struggled in the first half this week too, and they figured it out at the end. That's what good teams are doing right now. And, they're trying to, play their best ball next week, right? Get better this week. Let's improve and see what we can do next week, and I think that they did that. Are they a playoff contender in my eyes yet? No, but they have the talent, and they're growing and getting better. And I think as a Alabama fan, you've got to be pretty happy with what you saw and the trend that the program is going in. Now that first half, like I said, was probably pretty nerve wracking and frustrating, but second half they really figured it out, hunkered down, and played a pretty good game in that second half. And the defense is really as good as I think Alabama has seen since Kirby left. Honestly,
I could agree.
This
with
is
that.
a really good defense.
Not
this
as
is a really good
star-studded.
defense, and right.
Yeah.
Right.
very
They've got a
serviceable,
pretty good
and
pass
just
rush. Yeah.
yeah, cornerbacks are good, safeties are good.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a good team. It's a good team, and this year, you know what? Maybe that's all we can ask for because I didn't see a great team this past Saturday. I mean, I
Mhm.
really did, and I saw glimmers of greatness and in some, and we'll get to some of those, but Alabama still lacks the ability to really do anything on offense, man. And I think you're right. I think that they're showed some improvement in the second half, and Jalen Milroe, I guess 17 of 21, 225 yards, a touchdown, and interception. I think this is about what you're going to get. I think this
Yeah.
is about as good as you're going to get out of Jalen. Right now, I don't think you're going to just magically, press buttons and that's going to get a whole lot better throughout the year. But this right here has got to change if Alabama wants to get where they want to go. 45 carries for 131 yards, 2.9
Yeah.
yards per rush. That's just not gonna get it playing this style of football that Alabama's wanting to play because Ole Miss is not a team that we're sitting there saying, watch out, Ole Miss might shut you down,
Yeah.
they're not a shutdown defense in any way, shape, or form. So I do like this defense, and this defense is going to probably be able to keep them in any game. I don't see a prolific offense that they can't compete with this year. So I think that, if you're going to have a down year of offense, this is probably the year to do it, I guess. The more I think about it,
Yeah.
if you got a good defense, then you're going to have a shot. You're going to have a shot this year. Alabama is hey, they're 1-0 in the SEC play and 3-1. They're more than in decent enough shape to make a run, but it's going to take some continuity with that offensive line because we sat and watched them this past Saturday, and I didn't hear anybody talk about anything good about the Alabama offensive line. And I had an Alabama fan in my house, and he didn't have anything good to say. So I feel like that's kind of the attitude and the thoughts that are going on in T-Town right now. Let's keep it moving. Alabama wins 24-10. Let me say this about Lane. If Lane could have beat Alabama right here, or at some point before Nick Saban leaves, they'd probably hire him as a head coach. I mean, just being honest. But this dude, I'm telling you, he can't win no big games, and if he can't beat somebody, man, I don't know. He's going to be at Ole Miss forever. Nobody, I don't know. Great offensive mind. I don't know about Lane Kiffin long term. Maybe 7-5 and 8-4 is what Ole Miss is happy with. I'm not sure, but all in all, can't convert again. LSU and Arkansas. This was a really, really, really good game. Literally came down to the buzzer. LSU kicks a game-winning field goal with time expiring, essentially, and escapes Arkansas. I did not see this one coming, and I don't think
Do,
you did either,
do,
right? This was one of your bets.
um, I don't think that I had them actually.
Okay, you
Actually, yeah, I
didn't.
did. You're right. You're right. You're right.
That was
Excuse
one of the
me. I
few
didn't
that
have
we
them.
didn't convert on this week.
That's right. So yeah, I did take LSU minus 17.5 in this game. Um, I did not, honestly, as soon as I saw who the commentators were, I knew I was in trouble because drama just tends to follow Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit. Week in and week
Yeah.
out. Like if you question the game that they pick, it's going to be a good game. The last 2 years, this game was decided by 3 points. And what do you know? This game's decided by 3 points again. So since
Yeah.
Brian Kelly has been there, he's really struggled to get over the hump. Well, I guess he wouldn't have been there. This is only his second year, so. But still, a close game with Arkansas, who just lost to BYU last week. Like you said, nobody saw this coming. Maybe they were looking ahead a little bit over BYU. That makes me kind of question that. And maybe they were putting a game plan together for LSU at the end of the day last week, and got caught, with their cookie, with their hand in the cookie jar there. But but yeah, this was a game once again that I feel like LSU struggled in the first half. So another team who struggled in the first half to really get anything going. They were having issues getting the passing game going and converting. And then, Jaden Daniels kind of just put his foot down and took over there late and had some real success passing the ball late. And yeah, and I think, ultimately, this is what LSU should be doing. They should be at least winning games, but coming back late, maybe they found themselves in some trouble, and they're able to pull it out. But this is what a good championship type football team does. It's the SEC. You're going to have tough games, but you got to find a way to win, and they were able to do that. So everybody's going to give their best shot when it comes to LSU and Georgia and Alabama, and you got to be able to take those blows and dish them back, and they did that. So
Yeah.
I'm not slighting LSU in the least bit because of this performance. I thought that Arkansas just came out and gave their best swing at it and came up just a little bit short, But given the talent discrepancy, I think that's pretty admirable. So, yeah, that's about how I felt about it. I don't think there's too much to take away from this game. I think that they just found themselves in a good old fashioned SEC rock fight by the end of that game.
Yeah, well, I think the SEC West right now, take out Mississippi State and maybe take out LSU at the top. So you got your top team and your bottom team there. Every team in the middle there, those 5 teams in the middle there, mix them up. Now, I think they could all beat each other. I think Alabama's probably in the top 3 of those 5. You know, and that, but those 5 right there, I think anybody can beat anybody any given Saturday. And we'll talk about Texas A&M here in just a bit at the end, and how they pulled through and kept their hopes alive as their one losses in the ACC. So let's go ahead and go to UCLA and Utah. This was one of those defensive games that we talked about, man. Like, this was a struggle. Dante Moore had a really, really, really bad day. He had a very, very freshman-like day, as what you described as we were watching it.
Yeah.
Utah gets by. Utah's got a really good defense. I'm just come to that realization. I'm just going to accept it because, I mean, look, the statistics for either one of these teams neither one of them is going to blow you away in this game. This was a modest offensive performance for both teams. And Cam Rising was not bad. We talked about it last week. We thought that he was coming back, and we said 2 weeks ago he's just gone until he gets back. We're not gonna. Yeah. I'm not gonna continue to talk about it because I'm as you can see behind me, I'm a University of Georgia fan, and there is nothing but lies that comes out about injuries from Athens, Georgia. So I know how this goes, and I'm not gonna keep entertaining it. Nate Johnson is the quarterback until further notice. But I mean, there was a total of 24 first downs between both teams in this game. It was, not super entertaining. I mean, look at these rushing numbers here. I mean, it was nobody could run the ball. Nobody could really throw it. Tons of sacks for Utah on this one. It was not a good showing for UCLA. This was about the worst I've seen them look in probably about 2 years. What did you think about this one?
Yeah, it's a little upsetting. It went about the way that I thought it would go. A little bit, it was probably a little bit worse for both teams' offenses than I thought it would go. But I said in our breakdown of this game, I said that I felt like this was going to be a growing up game for Dante Moore, and it ended up being just that. Hopefully, I mean, we hope that he's going to grow up from this, but as a quarterback, that is, but and you saw it on that last drive or next to last drive that he had. He marched the team down for a 91-yard drive and was 6 for 6, scored a touchdown. Put their team in a position to, with time left to get a stop, a 3 and out, which they did, and get the ball back. And they did just that. It's unfortunate that UCLA's offensive line was not able to stop anything. I mean, they looked like a wet paper bag out there, and especially on that last drive, they couldn't hold up anything. So yeah, that was a bad sight to see. And as bad as Dante Moore played, I mean, the guy was running for his life out there, and wasn't getting much protection. Credit Utah's pass rush, but yeah, I thought the defense played well, kept UCLA in it. Utah, same thing. Defense played well, kept them in it. But the offenses are lacking severely, in this game at least. It was really a surprise to see UCLA only put up 7 points, 1 touchdown. I thought that Dante would not struggle, but I thought that Utah would be able to find more success than UCLA's passing game because of the inexperience at quarterback. But I didn't see it going this way, and Nate Johnson's, not experienced either, but they were able to find a way to win on his 9 of 17 with 117 yards in the pass game and a touchdown. So yeah, I mean, defensive score early ended up being the difference in the game at the end of the day. Had this game gone into overtime, I think that UCLA might have found a way to win it with the momentum late. But yeah, credit that pick six, in the first, I think it was the first play of the game, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, credit the defense. Again, we talked about how many great defensive showings there were this week, and this was an example of 2 teams who were in a rock fight all game long, and it was not pretty. It was not fun to watch. There's really not a whole lot to glean from this. We do get to see Utah again next week against Oregon State on Friday, and that's going to be a good game. So maybe we can take a little bit more away from the Utes in that game. But in this game, I just thought that both teams really didn't bring their A game, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, well, I think that I think that I did glean a little something from it, and here's my thing: Dante Moore was operating in an offense that was rushing for 270 yards per game. Well, they rushed for 9 yards, and he, no matter what the situation is with UCLA, they're not going to be successful without running the football in the system that they run. And there was a lot of opportunities in the read game that Dante Moore was just flat out missing the read and not pitching the ball, or pitching the ball when he didn't need to pitch the ball. It was a rough situation that he was actually walking to, and I should have been more aware to it. But if you just look at numbers, this was the third. They had the third most rushing yards in the nation for this year, and Utah's defense is for real. That's what I gather from it. This is a real deal defense. This is the first time UCLA has been shut out in the first half of a game since 2016. I think that Utah's got a really good defense, and I think that's what I'm going to glean from it here. And if Utah can figure out how to be a little more potent on offense, I'm not sure that they can, but if they can figure it out somehow, then they're going to be really tough to deal with. I mean, they really would be tough to deal with. And I am interested to see where this team goes. This is the back-to-back Pac-12 champion here that we're talking about, going for number 3, and all people ever do is doubt them. So if they can get Cam Rising back at some point, then man, who knows where this team could go. All right, let's talk about the game that everybody didn't want to talk about at about 3 o'clock because it got so daggum ugly. Um, the the Colorado Buffaloes and the Oregon Ducks. Yikes.
Yeah.
So let's start here. So Dan Lanning after the game, we all know how the game went by this point. Dan Lanning at the end of the game, or excuse me, pregame, was saying that they're looking for clicks, we're looking for wins. And actually, I think that's the video that's playing in the bottom right over here right now. And I'm going to pause that so we don't get some kind of copyright. But it really looked like a team that was looking for wins versus a team that was looking for clicks, for Instagram likes, things of that nature. You can't really find any stats on this sheet that don't look good for Oregon, Mason. I mean, it was like a great defensive showing. It was a great rushing performance. It was a great quarterbacking performance. Backups got into play. The backups looked better than Colorado. And Colorado, I could tell that there was a whole lot of belief going on with the Buffaloes because there was some rejected and dejected individuals on that sideline after that game. And then on the other hand of that, you had Travis Hunter, who was streaming Twitch at halftime, playing 2K24 at his house at halftime of the game. Pretty interesting dynamics and things that are going on with the Colorado Buffaloes, in my opinion. This seemed like a pretty undisciplined team this past weekend, and I think that's like the first time that I've really been able, I guess, to say that. Colorado was penalized 12 times for 106 yards. So obviously didn't help their case at all against the team that was clearly just way better than them. What did you think about this game, Mason?
Well, I mean, this game went exactly how I thought it would. Realistically, heading into this week, and I didn't. This is how I would have thought this game would go before the season started, right? So I
Yeah.
didn't change my thought of how this game would go because Oregon didn't tell me not to, right? They haven't shown me anything this season that said that this game would be close, right? You know, mind what Colorado has done with 3-0 start. It's impressive. Pat yourselves on the back. You had a good run. You were the center of the sport world for 3 weeks, right? And it was really fun to watch, but it's over pretty
Yeah.
much, right? Um, we'll watch you. I'll watch you again in the bowl game, and don't get me wrong, I'm gonna still watch Colorado a little bit, but I think that you'll see a similar type performance next week against USC. Except the game may look a little bit more like 56-17. Maybe something like that. So um, I was happy to see it because I was able to take this show off or this game off of my radar, and I was able to. It freed up a screen really early for me to watch another game, so I was pretty happy from that perspective. And yeah, it went the way that I thought it would. I thought this was a pretty signature win for Dan Lanning. He mentioned we're looking for wins and not clicks. Well, he's a college football coach at the end of the day, so he's going to take his attention however he can get it. And Deion Sanders kind of brought the circus to town in a way in Eugene, Oregon, and he used it to his advantage. He took center stage, went out there, and his team did the damn thing. And they won it big. And I think that and I mentioned this when we were in person, but I think that this was a statement win for Dan Lanning from a recruiting perspective, because Colorado and Deion Sanders is coming into the Pac-12, which they'll be leaving next year, but as will Oregon. But they're both kind of West Coast teams. They're recruiting from similar talent pools. And they're both nationally recruiting as well. But you've got to feel a little bit threatened by what Deion Sanders has been able to do in the transfer portal and in recruiting and on the field and things like that. So I think it was important for Dan Lanning to say, look, there's levels to this, right? And you're about 2 levels below where we're at as a program, right? So, and I think that that's exactly what happened with Oregon and Colorado, and yeah, I just think it was a good statement win for Dan Lanning. I would have liked to have seen them kind of put their foot on their throats later. They really should have put up about 60 in this game, but
Yeah.
um,
What I was
credit
about to
Colorado a
say.
little bit. Yeah. Only 7 points in the second half. You'd like to see them, um, even with backups in, continue to drive and score and things like that. But it is what it is. The game was out of hand. It was over, and uh, you know they got the win. They covered easily, and there's not too much negative to say. The defense held up, only giving up 6 points late in the fourth quarter, and I mean, you can't ask for too much more, other than the fact that this is a Dan Lanning led team in Oregon, and the standard is the standard, right? For Dan Lanning and his Ducks, they expect perfection. So I think that it's going to help them out having that poor second half, because it's going to give them stuff to coach on heading into next week, and the week after that. They got to find certain things. And the first half, there's not much to coach on. It was pretty much flawless, right? So second half, they got a little bit to work with. And I think that they'll continue to get better. I thought it was a really impressive showing from Oregon, and kind of their first time in the spotlight of college football, and they used it to their advantage and did well with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like Oregon took care of business, obviously, treated it like a team that wasn't very good. And I'm just going to be honest with you, Colorado at this point has some massive holes in their lineup. Love Shador Sanders. I love Travis Hunter. I love the Xavier Weaver. I think there are some pieces, but they're a long ways away, man. They're just a long ways away. Now, one thing that I did see and that I didn't like that Oregon 3 of 10 on third down against this team is not good. Colorado's averaged giving up about 50%, 60% on third down, which is horrid. This wasn't a very great stat, but then they were 3 of 4 on fourth down. So, anyway, obviously it was a butt kicking, and I think we're going to see another butt kicking next week as Colorado takes on USC. But we will see. My only regret from this past week was not putting more money on Oregon. I had that one minus 21. You did as well, and I literally watched for a few minutes, watched them get up 21-0, and I was able to change the channel and not even think about it. So great. That was a great bet, and only wish I would have hit it from another couple of angles and got some more out of it. But we'll see what the lines look like this coming up week, and definitely we'll give you guys our best bets on that. All right, let's go into this Cal at Washington game. I stayed up and watched this one for most of it. This was kind of like a flash fry. They threw Cal into the hot oil and flash fried them real early, and there was just really no chance of them ever coming back, even though they did have a 13-point fourth quarter. Michael Penix, not Dylan Johnson, these running backs, Polk, or excuse me, I meant receivers. Polk, Adunze. I mean, these dudes right here, man, 125 yards, 127 yards, 4 touchdowns between those two receivers. Michael Penix, 19 of 25, 304 yards. His averages are insane. Did throw an interception that was pretty bad. Forced one down the field. But I mean, with a gunslinger like this, you gonna have that. All in all, man, this was a really, really, really good performance. The defense went out there and got some turnovers. Cal they had nothing to lose from the beginning of this game and were just firing the ball down the field as much as they could. This is typically a rushing team. So all in all, Washington just looked really good all the way around, in my opinion. let's look at the team stats here. Yeah, so Washington was right around 50% on third down, got Cal into a ton of third down situations. Did, like I said, they gave up some yards, gave up a lot of passing yards in this. But I really don't glean too much from that. I watched this game. Those first 3 quarters were dominant. And like I said, Cal, I think almost Washington was almost scoring too fast. And we've seen this. We actually have kind of seen this with Tennessee. In this game, it was just like explosive play after explosive play. And they would jump down the field so quick. And it was like all of a sudden Cal had the ball again, and they were chunking the ball as well. So this was a good old Pac-12 matchup. Did you you probably didn't stay up to watch this one? I had the bet on the late game here, and covered, so it was totally worth it. What did you think about this one? And Michael Penix for Heisman?
Yeah, I had to go back and watch the extended full game highlights. You know, the 30-minute highlight reel, but I definitely wanted to watch this. You know, this was a game that a team in Washington that I probably neglected early on, and I won't do that anymore because they're very, very fun to watch. You know, unfortunately, I had to work today, so I had to get up early, and I wasn't able to stay up like I normally am able to do on the weekends. But you nailed it. I mean, they did give up 500 yards, right, to Cal, which is not great, right? On paper, it doesn't look great, but they were scoring very quickly. A lot of long touchdowns. They had a punt return touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, by Odunze, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so you know they're constantly giving the ball back, you know, and keeping their defense out there. Naturally, with a team like Washington who doesn't have the defensive depth that a Georgia, an Alabama, an Ohio State, or a Michigan have, they're going to give up a little bit of points. They're going to give up some yards, you know. But I thought that they managed it pretty well. They're going to have to continue that and find some depth in these later games as the season goes on. But you know, on the offensive side of the ball, you know, I look at Michael Penix and I say, really not his best performance, right? He didn't have his best game, but they're still able to win, and he still looks great, right? I mean, this wasn't, you know, I thought that this was a guy. This was like, to give you a baseball reference, this was a guy who didn't quite have his changeup tonight, you know, but he was still able to get it done and had some incredible throws. And his team just picked him up, specifically, you know, those 2 receivers that you highlighted. And I mean, it's another great performance by Penix. You know, certainly didn't lose the Heisman this week. And right now he's my Heisman front runner. He's very exciting to watch. We got to see Washington actually face a really talented team. I want to see them get into this Pac-12 schedule. I think that they're loaded on the back half of their schedule more so, but hey, I'm here for it right now, and it's very exciting to watch. If you get a chance to do it, I highly suggest it.
Yeah. Yeah, these all 3 of these interceptions right here were very impressive, and also, and you can see the return yards. So that first, and I think part of why Michael Penix didn't have as many yards and attempts that first quarter. I mean, they ran a kickback, and got an interception and had a really short field. I mean, really, they only had 1 full offensive possession in the first quarter, um, just because they were scoring so quick. As you can see, scored 24 in the first quarter, 21 in the second. This is a team that is just they're just a big play waiting to happen, and they are a lot of fun to watch. They really are. And so if you're going to stay up late, and you know, I would watch Washington if you're going to stay up that late, because they'll keep you awake. They'll keep you awake, and definitely a team that is going to have to be reckoned with. And as that schedule spices up in the Pac-12, and you know, going on the next few weeks, it's going to be really, really fun to watch. We're all us college football fan beneficiaries have some great football out on the West Coast in their last year as Pac-12. Let's go to Penn State. We had a wideout, and they brought their wideout, and they just whited Iowa right out as they pitched a shutout. Look, I talked last week about taking the Iowa team total unders in the first half, and they don't have that stuff out on Thursdays when we do the show. And I forgot to check it. And man, I was kicking myself in the butt for not going and checking that, because I said even if they have 3 points projected for the first half, I would take the under. And as it turns out, even if they had 3 points for the total for the game, I would have hit the under. As Cade McNamara, he was right about what he said about Penn State. And I won't repeat it. You can go back and watch the video yourself. But Cade McNamara, 5 of 14 for 42 yards. He averaged 3 yards. Oh my goodness. This was not good. This was a routine Iowa offensive showing, right? I mean, and they matched up with a very, very good Penn State defense. This was a dominant win for the Nittany Lions. I mean, in all aspects, honestly. Kind of slow to start off 10-0 at halftime, but as we talked about, being up 10-0 on Iowa is as good as being up 21-0. And then they turned it on in the third and repeated their success in the fourth to win 31-0. Drew Allar looks good, did everything that he needed to do. I think he needed to just have some kind of Heisman performance. Just needed to go out there and manage the game, and I felt like that's what he did. And also, Penn State was able to run the football. We talked about that last week. When is this offensive line going to gear up and allow Katron Allen and Nick Singleton to go do their thing? And I think for the most part, they did that. Pribula, he was the guy who actually was kind of the spark in the offense. Singleton had a rush for 19 yards, so I would say he had an explosive play, at least one. But overall, they get it done by association and run for 215 yards on a good Iowa defense. This was a great showing by Penn State, in my opinion. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree. It's easy to look at this game and go, man, I was awful. Why didn't Penn State score more points? But if you're a tuned in college football fan with your ear to the ground, Iowa has a really good defense. So
Yep.
I thought that for a first year starter and Drew Allar to come out and play the way he did was actually really encouraging, really promising. And there was bad weather. It was kind of raining all game. So
Yeah,
it
that's
was a little
true.
misty all game. So they weren't asking him to throw the ball deep. It was a lot of dink and dunks. You see 25 completions, but only 100 and I think it was 68 yards, if I'm not mistaken, passing. But anyways, 4 touchdowns in that as well for Drew Allar. And, on the other side of the ball, Iowa ran 33 total plays on offense. 33 total plays. That is just awful. Had 76 yards of total offense. That is a defensive performance for Penn State if I've ever seen one. But we knew that this Iowa offense is kind of anemic, and it really showed. I don't think they belong in the top 25. You're certainly going to see them move out after this performance, but I think that it really just kind of proved where these two teams are at right now. And I think that we can continue to be high on Penn State. I didn't see anything that showed me otherwise. I thought 200 over 200 yards rushing for the day was a promising sign for some questions at offensive line for the Penn State offensive line, and that's dominating up front. A really good Iowa defense, and then we didn't get to see much out of the wide receivers. So the questions that you might have at wide receiver, that those weren't answered necessarily, but they didn't do anything to make me say, "Oh, this is an awful unit." So,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my eye on that, and we'll continue to keep watch on Penn State and making and hoping that they can continue to do this to get to teams that they are better than, and let's see if they can do it against the big boys like Ohio State and Michigan as well. But yeah, that's about all I had on this game. It went about the way that I thought it would. I kind of had Iowa, by like, I thought that they would keep it within 17 points. I thought that Penn State maybe scores, it's like a 24-7 type of game, something like that. But yeah, ultimately
Yeah.
it was even more impressive for Penn State. So kudos to them for that. But that's really all I had on this game.
Yeah, we gotta see Lambert Smith step up a bit, or Theo Johnson, and I they had the bulk of the receptions. They spreaded the ball around a lot, and I think that's a decent thing. I think that's a good thing. But you definitely want to have your 2 or 3 go tos, and I feel like the best passing attacks have their 2 or 3 go tos, and then some guys that can help out here and there. And maybe we're starting to see that a little bit with Lambert Smith and Theo Johnson. Need to see some more rapport built with those guys if we're being picky and talking about Penn State winning a championship. This is a good team. This is a really good team and well balanced. And this defense is going to be able to, just like Alabama, I think they're going to be able to keep them in every game. I don't know of anybody that's going to be able to blow this team out. And I think that helps Penn State a lot in regards to wondering about who the wide receiver one is going to be, because I don't know that they're going to have to score 50 points to win a ball game. I don't think that that's going to happen. Not this year. Not this year. Not with what I've seen so far out of their opponent. Let's keep it going here. Ohio State at Notre Dame. Man, this was a roller coaster of emotion here. Mason both had +3 on this one on Notre Dame, and thought that time was expiring at the end of the game. Thought that Ohio State was going to win by 2. We were going to cover our +3. We're already high-fiving, counting our money, and then they review the play, add time on the clock, kick the extra point for a push, which was disappointing. But this game was not disappointing. Just a low score in battle, a lot like last year, to be honest. And I personally, and I've got a few notes on this, but I felt like Notre Dame had a chance to win this game. And after the game was over, we talked about it. I think if Notre Dame and Ohio State play this game 10 times, I think each team probably wins it about 5 times. This was an even match here, it felt like. And then at the end of the game, Kyle McCord just his clutch gene just comes out, and they march down the field and score when it mattered most to go ahead and win this ball game. Very impressive last drive, but outside of the last drive, pretty lackluster performances from the offense. But there is some takeaways that I have. Ohio State's offensive line looked pretty damn good. I thought this was a pretty good Notre Dame rush defense, and Ohio State was able to run the ball. Travion Henderson, 14 carries, 104 yards. He was very good. And then you kind of have a few different guys rushing the ball behind him. But all in all, man, I thought this was a really good rushing attack considering who they were going against. And Notre Dame ran the ball very well. I guess maybe a lot of people were expecting some more fireworks on offense, but this is 2 really good defenses, and Ohio State proves just how much better that defense is than last year, because that was a dominant showing. What did you think about this one, Mason?
Well, I think that 2 things can be true at the same time. I think that both teams' defenses played really, really well. And I also think that both teams' offenses played very fair, right? It was not what we were used
Played
to
really
or
tight,
thinking.
really tight.
Yeah, it was tight, and outside of like that last drive for Ohio State, there was not a lot of dynamicism, if that's a word. It was just very vanilla, it seemed like, and nobody was really taking the game over. Marvin Harrison Jr. gets hurt with an injury in this game. He does come back with his ankle taped up, but wasn't really the same receiver. And it seemed odd to me that the offenses played the way that they did in this game. It was like I said, like nobody really just wanted to win it. Everybody was afraid to lose the game. And I just thought I would see a little bit more fireworks, in particular coming from, Ohio State, who's kind of known for the big plays, right? But we didn't see that. So I do think that both defenses they look like top 10 defenses in the country, and I think you can look at it and say, well, if the defense looked that good, then why are you so hard on the offense? Well, I still think the offense looked pretty bad, and sloppy at times. But Kyle McCord, to his credit, he's able to kind of hunker down late as a first-year starter at quarterback. I think that he grew a lot from this game, and I think that he'll take a lot out of it. On the other side of the ball, though, with Notre Dame, Sam Hartman only had 25 passing attempts. Why?
Yeah.
He was averaging 7 per attempt, which isn't great. I get that, but why are we not giving the most experienced player on the field more opportunities to go out and win this game?
I agree.
There were other coaching decisions that you kind of have to scratch your head at. The final play of the game, Notre Dame's only got 10 players on the field, right? And and Marcus Freeman says, like, hey, I didn't want to get a penalty, but dude, it's fourth down regardless. It's half the distance to the goal. So you give them half a yard. I just don't think that really would have mattered too much. But they didn't think that through, I think, as well as they should have. And there were some other plays that you kind of have to scratch your head at. But I think that's where the experience as a head coach kind of comes into play. Ryan Day's been doing this a little bit longer. He's typically been losing a lot of these games, for a lot longer than Marcus Freeman has. So he's been able to learn a little bit more, and I think that showed in this game. So I give a little bit of credit to Ryan Day and being able to put this team in a good position to win. But ultimately, I really expected a little bit more out of both of these offenses, if I'm being honest. But a great game nonetheless. It made for a really great defensive game. It was exciting, came down to the very last play, but another thing too, though, I mentioned, coaching decisions. They did not have to kick that extra point, right? It would have made a lot of people who put their money on Notre Dame happier, like you and I. But what happens if they block the kick and run it back for a touchdown? Why not just snap the ball and kneel it? They had no business kicking the extra point. So I don't know what that was all about, but I guess maybe a push is better than not covering the spread. I don't know. That's just kind of weird to me. But yeah, look, Notre Dame still has their whole schedule in front of them. They can still go 11-1, and they're going to need some help from other teams since they don't have the conference championship. We mentioned that going into this game. Since they don't play in a conference, somebody's going to have to, lose a couple games and still win their conference in order for Notre Dame to get in at this point, right? I do see a path if they're able to somehow beat USC, and then USC goes on to go 12-1 and win their conference. I think it'd be really hard for Notre Dame to be left out if they have the head-to-head win. Clemson's a non-factor at this point, so they don't have to worry about them and competing for a playoff slot. So you really just have to kind of circle that USC game and say, guys, this is a must-win. Every game moving forward is a must-win, but they got to find a way to win against USC. And by the way, they can't overlook Duke next week. They're going to Duke. College game day is going to be there in Duke for probably the first time ever.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be a ruckus environment, and they've got their work cut out for them after a really tough emotional loss against Ohio State. I think it's going to be really tough to bounce back from that one, but with their backs against the wall here, maybe, are they going to be able to do that? We'll preview that game a little bit later in the week, but just some things to think about for Notre Dame moving forward. A gut-wrenching loss for them, and for Ohio State, I mean, it's kind of a must-win. It's not as important as winning Big Ten games at this point, but for a non-conference game, it was a pretty elite win, I think, for the program.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, Kyle McCord, got to tip my hat to him. I think they made the right decision. He came down and won the game for him, and kudos to him for that. I do think Notre Dame left some out there on the field, but like I said, that's football. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, and now we're moving on. USC at Arizona State. This was another one that I had. This was one of my losses. And shame on USC for not covering against this horrible 1-3 team here. Look, we'll go look at the box score and things, but man, this was a very, very sloppy performance by USC. Turnovers, just balls hitting off of people's hands, multiple intermediate passes. Caleb Williams threw. They were bouncing off people's hands. And I'm going to tell you something, Mason. This right here, this is just a gut thing right here. This is beyond the stats. But there's kind of like a weird vibe going on with this team. And I can't really put my finger on it exactly what's going on. Maybe they're just really super relaxed and just really, really confident. I don't know. The demeanor just seems off to me for this USC team. This is a great offense. Hey, do not get me wrong. Marshawn Lloyd is running the ball like crazy right now. Averaged 11 yards per carry in this game. And I believe he's averaging about 10 yards a carry for the daggum year. And there's obviously really good receivers on this team and all that good stuff. But the defense is not good. It's just flat out not good. And Arizona State was obviously throwing the kitchen sink at them. They didn't have nothing to lose, as any team with nothing to lose would do. It's kind of like the Cal situation, I guess, against Washington. But Drew Pine, 21 of 36, 221 yards, just had an okay day. This guy right here, Cameron Skattebo, was just absolutely killing USC, man. I mean, he was working them boys out there. And yet again, it's another Saturday where I feel like the Trojan defense is just running around the playground, and it doesn't seem like they're super organized. But this was the first time we've seen this offense not be very organized. Did you get to catch up on this one, and what did you think about it?
Yeah, I had to play catch up on this one too, but really, I just felt like the defense, kind of let me down here this week, and
everyone does.
I don't really expect a whole lot
for what matters.
Sorry about that.
I don't really expect a whole lot from USC's defense, but they were starting to look better in some ways, and then kind of what they gave up this week. I mean, to, like you said, a really bad Arizona State program. I just expected more. I thought that it was a tough cover. If there's like 36 points, and I thought that was pretty high, but I also expected USC to score a little bit more than 42. Credit, Arizona State for being able to sustain some drives and kind of take that time out. But really, it wasn't a great showing, for me. And I think that this week, I think that when we do our rankings here in the next day or two, I think that I'm going to have to put Ohio State ahead of USC after their big win. And I really wasn't impressed. I thought that this was a defense that had a chance to, with the personnel that they have, get better each week, and they really took a step back for me this week. And it allows an opportunity for me to question their legitimacy as a playoff contender, kind of moving forward in a tough Pac-12. And I don't have them going to the playoffs. I think that the Pac-12 is going to be a little bit of a gauntlet, and I don't think that any team's going to come out and go to the playoffs right now. If I had to pick one, I think it would be Washington, who could actually, come through 11-1 and win the championship and all that. But yeah, I think it was a little disappointing for USC in my eyes this week.
Yeah, well, and this is an Arizona State team that was shut out last week by Fresno State.
Yeah.
29-0. I mean, Fresno State absolutely just laid the hammer down on these guys last week, and USC can't get off the field. I mean, look, 6 of 16 on third down is not bad, but I mean, I don't know. Arizona State, they were going for it on fourth down. They were 3 of 4 on fourth down, which obviously is a very high rate of completion there. It wasn't a great showing by USC. And I guess what I'm trying to say about their attitude is it didn't really seem like they really cared about Arizona State scoring 28 points. Didn't seem like it was really a big deal to them at all. And I don't know. I just don't see a complete football team out there in Southern Cal. Love this offense. Love Caleb Williams. If I'm an NFL team, I'm licking my chops. Caleb Williams is my franchise guy that I'm going to build around. But there is unilateral misthought on football altogether at USC, and I'm just not here for it. I like a well-rounded team, and I think it's going to take a well-rounded team to win a championship this year. Florida State at Clemson. This was the first game I watched of the day, and this is really the last game of substance for the week that we're going to cover, unless there's we'll talk about Texas A&M and Auburn for just a second, but we're going to try to tidy this on up here. Florida State at Clemson. Jordan Travis is 21 of 37, 289 yards, 2 TDs, just a kind of an average day, in my opinion. But I gathered a lot from each of these teams from watching this game. And, Clemson has a hard time converting yards into points. And this was the exact same thing that happened against Duke. They outgained them by a significant margin, 429 yards to 311. If you're accumulating 429 yards, you've got to be scoring at least 4 or 5 touchdowns minimum, and I'm just something's off on this offense, man. And I think it might be Cade Klubnik. I don't know. I don't know what it is. You ran the ball successfully. You threw the ball for yards, a lot of yards, only 7.4 per completion. That's not very good. And not, 51 QBR, obviously not very good. Don't see a go-to receiver on this Clemson team, and I think it's a problem. I mean, they spread the ball around nicely, and that's great, but there's just no go-to guy to go score a touchdown in the red zone right now. In between the 20s, it seems like Clemson is just able to march up and down the field. They can run it, they can throw it, but when they get in the red zone, man, they cannot punch it in. And then on top of that, they don't have a kicker. So, they put all this pressure on this guy that they got to come out of, basically college football retirement to come kick for one game. And bless his heart, they spent 15 minutes telling the story on the broadcast. And I know this guy is just embarrassed at this
There
point.
is a very real sense of fear.
What role am I going to have? What do you want to do with your property? If you have kids, what do you want to do with custody?
Sorry about that. But with all that being said, Clemson's got a hard time turning yards into points. And until they fix that situation, they're going to continue to struggle. should have won this game. I'm going to be honest with you. If they can convert some touchdowns, man, they did a good job shutting FSU down. FSU's having trouble running the ball. They're having trouble run blocking, and they rely on a ton of 50-50 balls to these wide receivers. And if those wide receivers ain't going up and getting it, this offense is stalling out. And I came away with this actually kind of feeling better about Clemson. I know that's kind of weird. They just took their second ACC loss. They're pretty much out of the thought of anything meaningful for the most part. But I really kind of came away feeling decent about what I saw. They just got to convert that into points. And Florida State, I was not super impressed. And I think that they're going to lose a game in conference play before the conference championship. So I think Florida State's got a chance to take 2 losses if you include a conference championship game. There's holes in this lineup, and if things are not completely 100% on schedule for this team, then they do sputter. What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it's a close game. I'll start with Clemson first, right? I was pretty impressed with Clemson given the expectation after losing to Duke, right? Yep. I did have them winning this game. I thought it was going to be a tough environment, which it was for Florida State to step into. I saw the struggle last week that Florida State had with Boston College. And, you know, you look at this game and you know, you mentioned it, maybe it's Cade Klubnik that's having an issue or that's causing this issue with Clemson. And I think you might be onto something there. I saw something that concerned me in this game. So Clemson was, if you didn't watch this game, Clemson was running up and down the field. They were converting. They were, you know, doing everything but scoring. They had the game in control in a lot of ways, you know, really up until the very end. And there was a single play that happened that gave Florida State a ton of momentum. And it was where Cade Klubnik got blindsided pretty much. Maffa didn't pick up the block there, and it kind of missed his assignment and caused Klubnik to get drilled. You know, he fumbles the ball. Ooh. It's a scoop and score, you know, and man, it's a bad play. It's a bad look. And I see, you know, them, you know, cut to Klubnik sitting on the bench. You know, they're getting ready to kick off now. And he's sitting on the bench and he's like kind of laughing with his teammates, you know, and I'm thinking, what the heck, man? This guy, like, I feel like he doesn't have his head in the game. They're clearly talking about something other than the game, because there's nothing to laugh about in this game after that happened. I would be dead set on trying to get my team ready to go win, you know, and I saw, you know, I thought that was a little concerning. I thought it was odd, if nothing else, but I'm not going to take too much away from that. It was a little bit odd. I thought that he would have a little bit more composure and focus in that moment. To go out there and try to win the game for his team. At that point, it was tied at 17. So, like I said, it was just odd. Let's see. And then going over to the Florida State side, and one more thing on Clemson. So if you power rate Clemson, are they in your top 20 after this game?
If you're power rating neutral field matchups, I'd have to look at it, but probably so. I mean, it's obviously I would not bet on them because they can't score points. But I mean, statistically, man, they're just not a bad team. It's just not a bad team statistically. I don't know. There's just something missing. There's just something missing on this offense. I think it's a wide receiver one, and I think it's Klubnik, his inexperience. But yeah, I mean, I consider this to be a powerful football team. And if you're just looking at yards and getting up and down the field, like I said, in between the 20s, they're really, really good and good defensively. They're going to shut you. You're not going to be able to run the ball for 200 yards on Clemson. It's not happening. Not this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, to that point, I mean, I just feel like Clemson now is at least a top 25 power rated team. You know, they have the dudes to do this. And I think that going forward, you're going to have to take them a little bit more seriously in these games, per game matchups. Now they're out of the playoff race. They're out of really the ACC championship. I would think some things really have to go wrong for them to find their way back into the ACC championship. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty impressed. Like you said, even in this loss, I thought that Clemson looked better. They showed some promise for the future, maybe. I don't know if Klubnik's their guy necessarily, but yeah, it was a good game overall. And moving over to Florida State, I thought it was pretty bad for them. This is a team that's in the top 4. You're supposed to go into Death Valley there and take care of business, and they should have lost the game. Like, let's be honest, should have lost it. A kicker's nerves really on a 29-yard kick. A kicker goes wide left, and that's really what won them the game. At the end of the day, it forced overtime, and they were able to handle Clemson in overtime with their weapons, their pass catching weapons, and they took care of things at the end of the day. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Florida State is a team that I'm circling, and I've got some serious question marks about what they're able to do. Also with Travis, with Jordan Travis, I felt like nobody told him that he's out of the Heisman race yet, right? He's still out there chunking the ball deep. He's missing guys underneath, and he's costing his team some significant yards and points. So I think he needs to kind of settle down a little bit and understand, like, look, we got games to win. We need you to be a little bit more efficient. Stop trying to play hero ball and chunk the ball deep. It's not going to work. It might work 50% of the time, but the other half, could cost you the game in one of these games against a better opponent. So that's a concern for me. And I'm anxious to watch this team moving forward. I thought the pass rush looked good. There were some defense that looked good and showed some promise at least. But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, I don't think FSU ends up going undefeated in the SEC in a pretty tough ACC. This season. It's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be a little bit of a gauntlet, but they got over a big one here, once again, and kind of skate by.
Yeah. Look, I'm feel like I gathered a lot from this game, and whenever we go through the week 5 predictions later this week, I'm gonna kind of elaborate more on this. But I don't like Jordan Travis's demeanor right now. I think he's as the old heads would say, he's cruising for a bruising, and I don't like his demeanor to start the game. Before the first snap, he's out there clapping his hands, shaking his head. Buddy, you got a mission to complete here. It's not time for, that's locker room behavior. It's time to buckle down and be a leader for this team. And I don't see either one of these quarterbacks going to the sideline and coaching their team up and figuring out what's going on. It seems like these guys are content with letting the coach be the coach, and they just want to be a player. And Jordan Travis, you're right. I feel like he's bombing the ball, and eventually it's going to catch up with them, and it's going to be interesting to see their matchup coming up with Duke. I mean, they need to establish a run game, but they're not going to probably do that against Duke. So are they going to go rely on the 50-50 ball again all day? And if they are, then I think there's a 50-50 shot Duke could win the game. And I can't wait to see what that line is, because I've been a Duke believer all year, and I think Mike Elko is a coach that a lot of people are going to be after at the end of the year. There's going to be some major bags of cash thrown at his feet. But all in all, Florida State escapes. Feel like they're pretty lucky to have escaped. I think they're pretty lucky to have not had 40 put on them, to be honest with you. I put that on Clemson's offense more than I put it on Florida State's defense. And 300 total yards isn't going to get it if you're wanting to win all these games. Let's keep it moving, man. There wasn't a whole lot of other big games here. Texas takes care of business against Baylor, 38-6. It was it was a dominant victory. As you can see, this one was 28-6 at halftime. It was never in question. Michigan looks a little rough at first against Rutgers. It's 14-7. Rutgers is a pretty feisty team this year. But Michigan and J.J. McCarthy end up taking care of business. Not the best day for McCarthy after coming off a game where he threw 3 interceptions last week. Kind of having a come back to earth couple of weeks for him. But all in all, Michigan gets it done, able to run the ball and get things done against Rutgers. And then Georgia, we're going to talk more about Georgia this upcoming week as they've got a matchup coming up with Auburn. Probably going to save the Auburn stuff too, Mason, for the prediction video. There ain't Texas A&M beat Auburn, and I don't think that's super newsworthy, I guess. But Georgia takes care of business against UAB. Looks a little slow to start in the first, then all of a sudden a burst of power in the second and the third, and Georgia takes care of business pretty much like you would expect them to. Georgia didn't wait the entire first half to get going this time, only one quarter. So maybe that's improvement. Carson Beck was very hesitant to throw the ball down the field to start the game. Seemed like he loosened up as the game went on. Brock Bowers has a really good day. And Georgia's offense does score a bunch of points in this one and takes care of business. Anything on those games, Mason?
No, I mean you kind of covered it. These were top 3 teams playing teams that they should have beat. I thought it was promising that Texas actually didn't play down to their opponent for once. And they actually took care of business. So that was really good to see. I had and I didn't put any money on it, but in my ESPN 10 picks of the week or whatever, I had Baylor covering because Texas always plays down to their opponents. And they didn't do that this time. So from that perspective, it was a positive. And then Michigan kind of takes care of a Rutgers team that was 3-0 and looks pretty dang good, Michigan just kind of handled them. They big brothered them in a way. Rutgers go down and score first drive of the game, and Michigan just shuts the door after that and scores 31 unanswered. And then UAB scored more than I think anybody thought that they would, probably 3 times as much as anybody thought that they would against Georgia. Georgia's not able to cover. And I think that Trent Dilfer is a pretty good coach, and I think he's doing a good job over there at UAB, and was playing pretty good situational football, with that team and had them fired up all throughout the game. It wasn't about winning to them. They just wanted to play. And I thought they had a really good attitude throughout that game, and it showed. Once they get into their conference play, I think that they'll end up being a pretty good little program over there in Birmingham.
Yeah, and they got a lot of work to do over there, but I think they got the right guy. Got a coach that's playing to his standard, not to an opponent. And if you're going to coach one of these little teams, you're going to have to play teams like Georgia. And I think it was a best case scenario for UAB. I think this was exactly what they wanted to see. Good little second quarter there against a Georgia team that is loaded on defense, but Georgia continues to get more and more healthy. And as that continues to happen, I anticipate some growth. I'm not going to lie. I was pulling my hair out there for a minute with Carson Beck because he's a young guy. Look, I say he's a young guy. He's been in the system for a while, but he's young as far as his playing time goes. And I felt like as the game went on, he started looking downfield a little bit more. And maybe not being so afraid to throw an interception as he does end up throwing 3 touchdown passes, 2 of which go to Brock Bowers. I think the offensive line got a little better too. I think they're slowly building some continuity, and I think that's going to be needed this coming up week as Auburn's defense looks decent, serviceable defense that tends to wear out throughout the game. So we'll save the matchups talk for our prediction show that's coming up later this week. We've got a top 25 that's going to be coming out this week, and I'm ready to shake stuff up in my top 25. I've got some opinions, and I'm hoping that everybody will come and subscribe and watch and comment and come on the live show later this week, and let's talk some football. We're going to probably have a couple of special guests this week as Georgia and Auburn tee off the oldest rivalry in the South. But until then, that's all I've got. Mason, is that all you got, brother?
That's it, man. Another good week of college football. We got another busy week ahead of us, so just stay tuned to the channel. And we're going to be releasing a lot of content. We've already released a lot of content, so just keep an eye on the channel. Subscribe, hit that alert button so
Yep.
you know whenever we're going live or whenever we're reacting to something. And hey, let's keep it moving. We got some good momentum here and on the channel, and I'd like to keep that going. So we might have a surprise for y'all down the line. So just pay attention.
Your home and car insurance.
Yep, absolutely. A little teaser there. Yeah, everybody come join us throughout the week. You can kind of see the show schedule going down at the bottom of the screen there. Come join us. Let's talk some football. But until then, everybody have a great week. We will see you for the Week 5 prediction show and our Week 5 top 25. See you later this week.